Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the show. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank
Wonderful to have
you.
you.
Thank you so
And
much.
as you can see by the title, we're continuing our series from last week. And I think this time we have our cheat sheets and everything with us, and we're gonna we're gonna kind of go by what other people say about some of these chapters.
Nice, nice,
I
nice.
think what is the one I have says it's by Michael D. Fortner, and that was like in 2000. The only reason I'm using this one is because the text is in blue where his comments are,
Nice.
so I
Nice.
can actually see it.
Oh, great, great.
Otherwise, the other one was just like paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs,
Oh, wow.
and it was like all annotated, and it's like, I can't make heads or tails of this, so I'm not gonna be a scholar about it, and I don't, not trying to pretend to be a scholar about it. So, you know, we're supposed to have a little bit of fun with this, and I think that
Exactly.
if you learn something along the way, God bless you.
Amen. That's good. Sounds good.
So, where did we left off at? Where 12?
Uh, I think 11. We left off at 11. We read all of 10 and yeah, stopped right before 11. Hmm.
Okay, let's see here. Well, of course, I picked something where the guy says there is no chapter 11, so we go to chapter 12. Really?
Oh, really? Excuse me. Oh,
Bless you.
thank you.
Let's see if
Wow.
I can.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So
that's weird. It does. It goes from 10 to 12 in this one.
serious. Oh, wow. Oh, that's
Huh?
interesting.
That is
11
weird.
only has, I wonder if they wrapped up 11 in either 10 or 12 because it's only two verses from this one. So maybe
Okay.
it was too short.
Well, why don't you read 11? Then I'll start with 12.
Okay. All right. So Enoch 11, um, the uh, is first verse is, and in those days I will open the store chambers of blessing which are in the heaven, so as to send them down upon the earth over the work and labor of the children of men. And verse 2 is, and truth and peace shall be associated together throughout all the days of the world and throughout all the generations of men.
It was short.
Yes, very.
Maybe somebody dropped one of the Dead Sea Scrolls and they left out chapter 11 in this one or something.
Yeah, it could be easily lost, right?
Yeah, I can just picturing this scene with like Will Ferrell and the other guy from Step Brothers or whatever, and they're in charge of grabbing the Dead Sea Scrolls and bringing him to the translator.
Imagine, right?
Yeah,
And they have to go through a big city as they do it, right? The translator is in New York. He's in Brooklyn.
or that movie. What was it? Year One with the guy from School of Rock.
Oh,
Gosh, why
is it
can't I
Jack
think of?
Black?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I just had that. For those of you that didn't see the first episode, to quickly summarize, and I hope this is a quick summary. Basically, in the first 10 chapters, we learned basically each of the chapters are full of stuff, like they're packed,
Yes.
and it talks about a lot about the end times, and it talks a lot about the fallen angels taking human wives and having kids, the Nephilim, the giants, um, teaching man how to, I think, write and use weapons and metalwork and that kind of stuff. And what else? I know I'm missing something, but that's the gist of it, I think.
Hmm.
So you're all caught up now, I think. But there's plenty of copies of the Book of Enoch online. You can find, when you search, just put PDF at the end of it, and you'll find a lot of freely available, PDF versions of it. So if you want to read it yourself instead of having to follow along with us, you can read it on your own and then watch this later, however you want to do it. But is what it is. So what does it say about chapter 11, or does it give a little blurb or description for 11?
You know what? Can you share the one that you have, like the link that you have for
Let's see.
please?
I'll do this. I'll email it to you because it's an actual PDF. Let's see
Gotcha.
here.
Oh, okay.
Commentary. Okay, give me one sec.
Mm-hmm.
I always make weird noises when I'm
I do that too.
doing busy work or something.
Right. And I have my email open, so when it comes through.
All right, so what is this called again? Ooh, almost give you my new intro for the show.
Oh.
I had some Jamaican guy do it on Fiverr.
Oh, Fiverr. Oh, nice. I like Fiverr.
The guy. I mean, he gave me exactly what I wanted. It's epic.
Wow.
I love it.
That's great. I love it so much. I've had some good work done on Fiverr.
Okay, you should be getting it any second.
Okay.
And remember, there's no chapter 11.
Okay. Let's.
So yeah, I see. He started on the Super Bowl thing too, huh?
Oh wow! Oh my goodness, that thing was one crazy thing, right?
Yeah, it was like the who's who of. Sorry, people, we're just taking a little pause here for a second. It's like the who's who of reverse racist kind of,
Exactly.
And Eminem, I think, thought he ended racism forever by kneeling.
Oh my goodness, so crazy, right?
I didn't even watch it. I just saw clips of it from stuff that was posted on Telegram or whatever. And
can't blame you. It was really like one of those things that it was just, you could just see how they jumped the shark with it. So ridiculous. Okay,
see Snoop Dogg made it, even though he's being accused of something now.
Right? Yeah, I wonder.
We can't let Martha's weed buddy out.
Exactly.
They had to bake their brownies beforehand.
Okay.
See, folks, you're getting two different shows today.
Right. All right. So I am okay. I see where it did.
I think page 11 or something like that's where I'm at.
Page 11. Okay.
I think. Yeah, 11.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
See how it's in blue? It's easier to read.
Right.
Sort of.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Okay. Let's start with 12. 12:1 and going on. Before all these things, Enoch was concealed, nor did any one of the sons. Just so you know, when I read, sometimes I skip over the punctuation, sometimes I don't. So if you're trying to follow along, don't try to follow along with the punctuation. Nor did any one of the sons of men know where he was concealed, where he had been, and what had happened. He was wholly engaged with the holy ones. That's another thing with this book. We talked about the language of the book last time. We talked about how it was written.
Mm-hmm.
I love this sentence. He was wholly engaged with the holy ones and with the watchers in his days. So is that like two separate groups? Because it says he was wholly engaged with the holy ones, comma, and with the watchers in his days. So I don't know if they're still referring to just the watchers or what, but and it says, I, Enoch, was blessing the great Lord and King of peace, and behold, the watchers called me Enoch the scribe. Isn't scribe in your name, like in one of your emails or something, like Ben
Yes,
Scribes or
I've had
something like
that
that?
for so long. Yeah, that's
That's
right.
kind of weird.
It is kind of.
I
Whenever,
remember weird things like that. I just do. I don't
yeah,
know.
no, it is. It stands out because you don't see it too often. That word.
Hmm. Then the Lord said to me, Enoch, scribe of righteousness, go tell the watchers of heaven who have deserted the lofty sky and their holy everlasting station, who have been polluted with women. Wow, that's a strong statement. Who have been
Yes.
polluted with women. Man, don't want to say that in public today.
I know, right?
Just by looking at you, it looks like you've been polluted with women.
That'll get you canceled, right?
That'll get something. Jeez.
Oh wow.
And have done as the sons of men do by taking to themselves wives, and who have been greatly corrupted on the earth, that on the earth they shall never obtain peace and remission of sin, for they shall not rejoice in their offspring. That's interesting. For they shall not rejoice in their offspring. So does that mean they're going to hate their kids, or their kids are going to hate them? I wonder
Mm,
what that means.
that
They
is.
shall behold the slaughter of their beloved, shall lament for the destruction of their sons, and shall petition forever, but shall not obtain mercy and peace.
Mm,
That sounds pretty. Hey, Casey, how you doing? It sounds pretty. Wow. It's like, okay, you had kids with these fallen ones, so you're pretty much you're SOL, and you're gonna hate your kids. You're gonna wish them dead. So
wow.
let's see what it says in blue here.
Hmm.
This is more evidence that there were indeed angels who took human wives. It is my opinion that they are a separate group from those that fell with Lucifer. That's interesting.
Mm,
The Watchers are not said to have been cast. I think he means out there. He says our. I hate that because it makes me look funny. The Watchers are not said to have been cast out of heaven, but voluntarily left their positions so that they would live upon earth. Perhaps they became permanently human, unable to dwell in the spirit world after taking wives until they were bound in chains. The Watchers asked Enoch to pray for them, that they would obtain mercy, which Enoch did, with the effect that Enoch had a vision in his sleep. And I guess that's what chapter 13 is. But looking back, let's see what he says here. It says, the Watchers are not said to have been cast out of heaven, but voluntarily left. And I
mm,
guess that kind of goes back to what I was asking earlier about the two groups. He was wholly engaged with the holy ones, comma, and the Watchers in his day. So
hmm.
either way, it sounds like there was a spiritual kegger going on down on earth. All these divine beings at one time are descending upon the earth here. So,
Hmm.
and Enoch's kind of looks like the middleman.
Right, right. Yeah. He had a big assignment.
Yeah, I mean, one hand you got the holy ones and the Watchers, and the other hand you have God talking to you. It's like
Wow.
it's pretty full schedule.
Definitely. Very full. And that,
Okay.
what you were asking about their offspring, I'm just picturing that, because they defied their position so badly that them having children with the daughters of man would turn out to be bad. Like there's no goodness in it. So, you know what else, John, I was thinking, and Casey, is that to me, it becomes clear that even the angels have something similar to what we have is
Mhm.
emotions. And I don't know if
Hmm.
have you ever thought about, like, it just hit me.
Yeah.
They have emotions, and I don't know if I would have figured that they would have emotions, but emotional things are attributed to God as well. When we talk about God is grieved or he's sad about something, it seems
Hmm.
like he goes through emotions. So that's interesting that we have emotions as well.
That's interesting. I never thought about that because the way it's presented in like the religious structure of the world, it almost seems like the angels only do God's bidding. Like they're almost emotionless. They okay, we'll go do it. This is our job.
Hmm.
But then when you hear about encounters with angels, like when I don't know if it was Michael that appeared to I don't know if it was Paul or whoever it was
Hmm.
before that battle. It seems like when you read the scripture itself, it seems like they do have emotions and feelings
Hmm.
because they care. And people always say, "Well, God's neutral. God doesn't have a side." It's like, well, that's not true. God does. God does have a side. He's pretty particular about sides in certain instances. I mean,
Hmm.
look at what happened with Babylon. Look what happened with Sodom and Gomorrah, and look at what happened with a lot of the displeasure, like when Moses came off the mountain, and everybody was kind of doing bad things and idol worshiping and that kind of stuff. So
Right.
look at the flood, the great flood. So
Hmm.
God has a side, and you know, in today's light, getting a little off track here, but in today's light, people would say, well, if there was a David and Goliath, people would say, well, you have to pray for Goliath. It's like, no, I think if God wants me to slay some giants, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to pray for Goliath. I'm going to do what God asked me to do.
Hmm.
So that emotion thing is kind of interesting. And referring back to the fallen ones, the Watchers,
Hmm.
maybe they did go full human or whatever. Maybe they suffered the same fate as man, and had emotions. Were afraid to die or whatever, or you know, I don't know. That's an interesting concept, and
Yeah, isn't it? I just thought of it, John and Casey. I see Casey saying something there because
yeah,
I don't know. I just thought about they have to, like, they're not robotic and they seem to have free will also, because if you think about, they decided to go against God. So it's like they would have a range of thought and emotions to do that. And then to have attraction for the women shows that
hmm
they would have lusted. So,
right.
I was like, wow, I'm just thinking about that. I'm like, so emotions are something that are not just, our plight or whatever, because we go through them and sometimes we can't control them, anger.
Right.
I don't like going through all of my emotional, range. I don't like anger, of course.
hmm
I don't think anybody really likes it, but maybe some people like it, but I don't
Yeah.
like it. I don't like it. So, God has a wrath, so he gets angry,
hmm
and Jesus threw the tables over.
Flipping tables.
Yeah, and everybody's felt like doing that before, flipping some tables, but you know, that's just something that I just gathered just when you read that. I was like, so they would be sad about having children with these women. These relationships didn't produce anything that would have made them happy in the end.
Right.
Like it seems like they went for their whatever that was, that lust, and then later on, like, look at the results, the harvest. Wow.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you think about it too, everybody, if you have human emotions, you're going to have anger, and I don't care if you're a monk or whatever. At some
Hmm.
point, something will push you to the point where you're going to have to dispose of your anger in some manner.
Hmm.
And some people don't know how to do that. Some people flip tables or they do whatever, and that's how they get rid of their anger.
Hmm.
Some people remain silent and walk away and then die of a heart attack because they can't allow their anger out. Or
Hmm.
I'm sort of like that as a person. As a kid, probably up until my 30s,
Hmm.
I always had a way to express or get rid of tension or anger or whatever, those kind of emotions, because I would play. I played like semi-professional volleyball, so I had an out
Oh yeah.
for that aggression, I guess, or that
Mhm.
whatever. But as I've gotten into like 40s and 50s, it's harder, so so I have to be careful, and I have to voice all my concerns to whoever it is that's bothering me or whatever. Otherwise, it just eats me up, and then I'll just explode. Like I won't get violent or anything, but
Mhm.
I'll say something stupid, or I'll just blurt something out that's whatever. But
Mhm.
I can imagine that if now you're a human form, you find out you're having kids with these human women, but you also find out from Enoch that God's telling them that they're not going to be normal and they're going to be basically hated and loathed and
Mhm.
yada yada yada. So yeah, that's a pretty heavy load, and back then everything seemed like it was a heavy, like everything had a lot of meaning.
Mhm.
Even seemingly simple ways of life seemed like
Right.
it was like there was all kinds of heaviness about every decision you made. And
Right.
so
Mhm.
what's
Oh wow,
Casey?
look at Casey said.
Casey's going on a roll here.
Yeah, wow, Casey said they were. Yeah, that's true. She says they were angry and hateful and vengeful.
Mm-hmm.
That is a good point. And this is my first time seeing angels in this way, because I think
Right.
growing up, I don't know if you all can relate to this. You know, when you're in church and you see the stained glass and you see the angels, and that might be why it was hard to connect to these things, is that it was a sanitized version of angels that,
Mm-hmm.
look like they were painted by the Renaissance
Right.
painters. They're cherubs and they're happy and they're
Cute
just,
little fat babies.
yeah, like, and then when you realize, whoa, this is not at all what an angel is about and their qualities. And now
And then
it's
you
like relearning, right?
yeah, and then you find out there's a hierarchy. Like there's like
Right.
from the archangels all the way down to the little cherubs, there's an order, and like
Right.
it's just, but people don't realize that men or people, humans, stand at the top of that order. Like
Wow.
they don't fall below the dominion of angels. They only fall below the dominion of God. So basically, we're above angels in that respect, and that's why I think you hear and see a lot of people talking about bringing angels into their lives and asking them to do things, and because we've been taught that they're there for humanity. They're there to you know and there's an innumerable amount of angels, according to the Bible. There's just like just as many angels as there are people, basically.
Yeah.
And but they're there as a force to do God's will, but at our bidding, so to speak. So
Amazing.
the whole thing fascinates me, and it's like you can
Mhm.
just I could watch hours of videos on it, and everybody has a slightly different opinion, but
Mhm.
they all kind of say the same thing, is that you know there's a hierarchy, and no matter what the hierarchy is, human beings are not below any of the highest angels. So like we are God's favorite, I guess.
Yes.
See, Casey says, what does she say? I always thought they were perfect, peaceful, loving, pure. Yes. Yep.
Mhm. Me
Exactly.
too, Casey. I thought they all were, yeah. And then, you're like, whoa, the cherubim, the seraphim, and all of this stuff. And
And the ones with the weird, like multi heads or multi faces or whatever, I
oh
can't
yeah,
remember.
the one from Ezekiel, the ones that it's like they're going forward and turning,
Yeah.
the eyes are all around. I love
And
reading that.
as far as I know, there's like cherubim guarding like the Garden of Eden, or guarding like the tree of knowledge, tree of life, whatever that was called. Sorry for those that do know. I'm still learning, but
Mhm.
I just know that their angels were placed there to guard that.
Mhm.
So we little people can't find our way back there.
Yes,
And
a
if we
lot
do,
would like to find their way back there.
yeah. Let's see. So, um, all right, why don't you start or do 13?
Okay. All right, 13. And for anybody wondering, I'm reading from the Ethiopian. So if it sounds different, I just want to let you know, Casey, or anybody else. So Enoch 13. Then Enoch, passing on, said to Azazel, "You shall not obtain peace. A great sentence is gone forth against you. He shall bind you. Neither shall relief, mercy, and supplication be yours on account of the oppression which you have taught, and on account of every act of blasphemy, tyranny, and sin which you have delivered to the children of men." Wow, they use the word tyranny in here.
Yes, I do.
That's pretty deep, right? And then departing from him, I spoke to them all together, and they all became terrified and trembled. Wow. Beseeching me to write for them a memorial of supplication, that they might obtain forgiveness, and that I might make the memorial of their prayer ascend up before the God of heaven, because they could not themselves thenceforwards address him, nor raise up their eyes to heaven on account of the disgraceful offense for which they were judged. Then I wrote a memorial of their prayer and supplications for their spirits, for everything which they had done, and for the subject of their entreaty, that they might obtain remission and rest. Proceeding on, I continued over the waters of Dan Badan, which is on the right to the west of Armon, reading the memorial of their prayer until I fell asleep. And behold, a dream came to me, and visions appeared above me. I fell down and saw a vision of punishment, that I might relate it to the sons of heaven and reprove them. When I awoke, I went to them. All being collected together, stood weeping in wow, Bel Sel Yael, which is situated between Libanos and Senneser, with their faces veiled. I related in their presence all the visions which I had seen in my dream, and began to utter these words of righteousness, reproving the watchers of heaven. Whoa. They were in some big time trouble. Let's see what it says here in the it tells us about the waters of Dan Badan,
Yes.
and it says that Libanos and Senneser are Lebanon near Damascus, and the other one is Dan. So I guess like where the tribe of Dan may have. Wow. So it doesn't break down anything more other than it looks like the locations of where the watchers. So that's interesting. Wow, everybody. So thinking about where they were hanging out in the part of the world, like to pinpoint Lebanon.
Yeah, that whole area has a lot of history.
Yeah, Damascus. Didn't we hear that Damascus was going to be destroyed, right? In the last days, totally taken out.
I find it interesting too that this is looks like it's kind of the start of, because a lot of the Book of Enoch is about his prophetic visions, his what the archangels and God were trying to show him about the end times. And it's interesting the way it's worded here. It's almost like the fallen ones or the watchers are all hanging out together, like they live in the same commune or something. Like they have like a compound, because he basically, after he's wakes up, he goes and they're all together, like they're all, so he's
Right.
able to talk to them all. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if they had like their own little town, like their own little community or whatever, like the community of the fallen angels slash watchers and the women. And
I bet they did. I mean, when you think about it, if they dwelled with the women after having, because it said they took them as wives, so
right.
that must mean that they they did live physically with them.
And you would think that it would be a willing thing or a mutual thing, because it really doesn't, because I guess, even fallen angels, they can appear, even when they're human, they don't appear, I guess, ugly, or in a way that women wouldn't want to marry them, or be with them, or whatever the case is.
Right.
Just, I wonder if they were told up front, though, that, hey, we're fallen angels, we're the watchers, but now we're taking human form and we want to have kids with you. So I wonder if they just pretended to be men from the area and just took them as wives, and then boom, suddenly there's giant babies. And there's giants roaming the earth, like,
Yeah,
I
that
wonder
is
how,
interesting.
that's interesting. I don't know how that would have come about.
hmm And like you said, they take on a form that's going to be attractive
Hmm.
to humans. So I'm thinking Azazel was probably so handsome because Azazel taught women to paint their eyelids. So he knew about beauty and cosmetics. So that includes, like, I think for me, like everybody, I was limiting that aspect to just makeup. And it's much greater what Azazel taught. That means even you men, okay, John, even you men learned beauty and
Yes.
things, from Azazel. So it's not just women and makeup and hair and jewelry, but it includes all cosmetics. So anything you do, like even to treat your skin
Hmm.
or anything like that, it was all taught by Azazel. So that's really like, so I'm sure he was probably like they're going to assume a very handsome, form.
If to me, it's even, I mean, ancient Egypt and a lot of ancient cultures, men wore makeup. Men were the ones wearing
Yes.
the makeup in most cases.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And a lot of the hieroglyphs that you'll see, men have, the eyeshadow, or the whatever, around their eyes, and they've got
hmm
coloring to their cheeks, and treatments to their hair and that kind of stuff.
Right. Right.
Um, Even like ancient Chinese and Japanese culture, like images, you see a lot of makeup
Mhm.
on the men. I don't think of it as like the crying game kind of thing, but more like the if you ever saw the movie Stargate with Kurt Russell,
Oh,
how they portrayed the aliens, the ones that would have been the ancient Egyptians that humans would have thought of anyway. The
mm,
way they wore, it wasn't like a ton of makeup. It was just to highlight their eyes, and
right,
that kind of
right,
thing. And
right. Yeah.
so
And
I
I
mean, yeah.
think the eye makeup was to make them look like animals. Like, how they brought
Hmm.
the point, they call that a cat eye. So the Egyptians did that stuff. And when you look at the animal kingdom, like the cheetah
Hmm.
has this kind of eye. So,
And
yeah.
plus the all-seeing eye, I guess, maybe in a way that made you look more intelligent or something, or more all-knowing, because if you look
Oh,
at the eye of Ra, and like a
mhm.
lot of times the eye of Ra has that curly Q on the end of it,
Right.
so I wonder, with them doing it to their eyes, kind of making them godlike in a human form, and making them all like, if you gaze into their eyes, and like, they can see through your soul, kind of thing. And
hmm hmm
Casey brings up a good point, but we talked about this last time, Casey, and it's a good point. She's
Yes.
trying to get past the women surviving births.
hmm
Jennifer has a theory, and I kind of believe it, that the babies were born normal. I mean, they looked like normal babies when they were born, but they might have had some kind of crazy growth rate, or just kept growing throughout their lives, and just, nothing stunted their growth. If
hmm
anything, it was like, I don't know. I mean, if you think about it, some of the largest animals on earth start very small and normal looking. Like I'll go
Right.
back to my again breeding of reptiles
Mhm.
because I've excuse me, and monitor lizards especially.
Mhm.
If you think about the the Komodo dragon is the largest, most heavy-bodied reptile lizard
Mhm.
on the planet. There's another monitor species that's longer,
Mhm.
about 12 to 14 feet long. The Komodos get 8-ish or so
Mhm.
feet long, but they weigh a couple 100 pounds or so. So
Mhm.
when you have a number of different species, they're born relatively the same weight, almost same size, except for some of the dwarf monitor species. But like
Okay.
there's a big swath of them that are you would never know if you didn't know anything. You would never know that like this species would get to be 200 pounds, and you would never know this one only gets to about 10 or 11 pounds.
Right.
So
Mhm.
I'm guessing it makes sense that these kids are born and they just started growing like crazy.
Yeah. And it's a good question, Casey. And that's what I like about what we're doing now. Like the ones that are waking up to this, these scriptures here. Oh, that's so nice, Kyle.
Yes, thank you, Kyle.
You're welcome. That Casey's question is so honest. And I think that's what we should do. Don't be afraid to ask the questions, because a lot of us have been programmed to not ask questions. Like, I don't know if you were like me in church. I grew up in church and I used to ask a lot of this kind of questions, always inquisitive, but I wouldn't get answers. Or if I got
Yeah,
answers, they weren't.
God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, it was like the answer that makes you stop questioning anymore, or
Hmm.
you feel bad and self-conscious that you're wondering these things. But I think that asking a question like that, it helps other people, because they're like, "Oh, I was wondering that, but I didn't want to ask because everybody looks
Right.
like an expert." But we're not experts. We're wondering the same things,
Yeah.
and we're becoming comfortable just saying like, "No, we don't." Like, this is all new. And the concept of giants and things like that, I couldn't even say giants really until like a couple of weeks ago. I
Right.
couldn't say it in like a serious way. I felt ashamed to even like say, like, is it possible? Is this like a Bigfoot story that you see on like the Discovery Channel?
Yeah.
Uh, but
Even as kids, like when they talked about David and Goliath, they
right,
just made it sound like Goliath was just his like a big guy, like
yeah,
not a giant,
right,
just a
not
big
a
guy.
exactly. He was just the tall guy in the neighborhood. He was on the basketball team. He was just a bully.
Right.
Yeah, nothing like what we're realizing now. But you know, just like what John said, like Casey, it's so hard to imagine like the giants born normal size, maybe a little bigger. They might have been 10-pound babies. Who knows? Like the women may have had to have cesarean sections on these babies, but the growth of them. And have you heard of has anybody ever heard of the giant gene? They call it the giant gene.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I just heard about that. Like literally, I just learned about that a couple weeks ago when I was studying the giants, and they said that some people that you see that are really muscular, they don't have to take steroids and things like that. They just get really big because they have.
Well, look at Andre the Giant. Speaking of, he had it in his name.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
guy and several others. I mean, they were huge. I mean, just massive, massive people.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep.
I mean, to the everyday Joe. I mean, Andre the Giant was, geez, must be that macaroni and cheese. I mean, to normal everyday people, Andre the Giant he was an awesome guy. I guess he had a wonderful heart and he was just a wonderful person,
Mhm.
but he was an oddity. And I guess, growing up in our society, oddities have to do weird things or strange things to survive because otherwise they'll regress or turn in on themselves and some of them will commit suicide or whatever the case is.
Mhm.
So Andre decided to wrestle and but there's always, I mean, look at like the butler in the Adams Family, like Lurch, that
Right.
guy,
Mhm.
and maybe we'll do a show on giants again, because I think that's a subject that people seem to be really interested in, and
Mm-hmm.
we never really covered it 100% when Joe and I did it, but we briefly last episode showed a chart with some known skeletons that have been found and their sizes and that kind of stuff. And there's some stuff going on with giants, and almost every ancient culture, including like ancient Egyptian culture, Sumerian culture. Yeah, look at Gilgamesh. We talked about him last time. I mean, look, almost every statue or every image you see of him, he's always he's holding an adult lion under his arm, like it's a little kitten. And
Yeah.
so back then, people were a lot more literal that long ago. So if they were to draw something or carve something, it was in their mind that was the literal thing that they were seeing.
Right.
So to me, Gilgamesh is a good example because they're not like trying to make him look different. He looks like somebody that would have lived in that time. If you were to imagine that sculpture or image in color, the way the hair is braided or curled, I can imagine like really dark black hair, kind of thing, like a Grecian or Mediterranean kind of look. And to me, it's just there's too many coincidences for things not to be coincidences.
Right.
If that makes sense.
I agree. Exactly.
But humans have just over time have gotten smaller. I mean, to me, it seems like, or I should say bigger, not smaller. Flip that around. Because if you think about like Victorian England and, even in the late 1600s, early 1700s, like I think the average size of a person was like 5.5 feet or five. Like women were much shorter. Like men were not known to be generally taller than 5.5 feet or so. And
that's a good point. Yeah.
So there's something to be said about that, and that's a whole nother show.
It is. That would be fun to talk about it, because I don't know. I have really tall people in my family, like on my dad's side, like they're like 6'5", and yeah, up. And I'm tall. I'm 5'10", and my daughter's 6 feet. So who knows? Maybe we got a little giant stuff in us. But I'm from Philly, and when I would go to Betsy Ross's house. It's all that historical stuff. I feel like a giant when I'm in Betsy Ross's house. Walking up those steps, it's like so tiny. So like you're saying, John, they were so much smaller.
Yeah, and it wasn't that long ago. I mean, a couple hundred, 2.5 centuries ago. The rooms were smaller in the houses. If you go to some of these houses that are still standing, from the late 1700s or so, the rooms were small, and the ceilings were in some houses. The ceilings were low, or seemingly low anyway.
Right.
But and even in modern society, like right now, you still have the obsession like with Bigfoot and large bipedal humanoid creatures, and so people still have a fascination with the idea that there are giants, not just like with humanoids, but even in the animal kingdom. There's the thought of the Loch Ness monster or other like dinosaurs still making it through and being in the Congo somewhere, that kind of stuff. And so people are still obsessed with the idea of big things, giants, whatever. And so we'll do a show on that. That's got to be explored, because there's too many people that ask that are just too, like, it comes out all the time. Almost in every show, something about giants comes out.
I think it's that time period that we're in. This stuff is being unveiled to us, where we were maybe too busy with other things, so distracted that these aspects of the Bible, we were taught that these things are allegories or something. Don't take them like literal.
Yeah, and we're truly blessed to be living right now, because this is truly a time of revelation. There's a lot of things that are it's going to shock a lot of people, and I don't mean like in a bad kind of way. It's going to shock a lot of people, for reasons that we're talking about. Like you didn't learn that, or it was kind of brushed off. But when you learn that, hey, this is something that's true, or this is something that's probably true, it can be a shock to somebody that has very strict dogma or very strict,
Yeah.
thinking and strict upbringing, or whatever the case is. And I get it. People that have held a belief for so long, you don't want to be wrong. You don't want to think
Yeah.
that what you learned was wrong,
Right.
or that what you were taught, and the people that taught it to you, you don't want to believe that they were wrong, or that they were, and they may not meaningly do it because they may not know. But they just, it's like a status quo. It's like a,
Mm-hmm.
you don't rock the boat kind of thing. It's just, this is how it is, and this is what we're going to keep teaching. And this is, so when you go to or Bible school or seminary or wherever you go, you learn the same thing again. The next generation learns the same thing. So I do think this is a truly a time of revelation, and hopefully some of the stuff that was hidden away in the Vatican becomes available at some point. And
That would be great.
because I don't know, obviously 100%, because I don't live there and I've never been there, but I'm pretty sure that there's some stuff that's going to blow the socks off of humanity that's been kind of hidden away there for a while.
I agree.
Let's see, Christy. See, John, you're so right. They left so much out of the church and Bible school. Yes, I believe that.
Yes.
And hello, Johnny. Hello. Casey says, I always felt like there was more, and now it makes sense why I did.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the way we treat our children. You should never get in the way of a child having an imagination, or getting in the way of a child feeling like they're creating their own world and they're creating their own reality, kind of thing. Because children are like the purest state of humanity. Like when the first, who knows what happens in the womb too. I mean, who knows what you're learning and what you're picking up and what you're sensing and what you're, so when you're born, I mean, I can remember when I was a kid still how grand the world seemed to be, and how endless everything, and how possible things seemed. Nothing seemed impossible when I was a kid. It was always, everything seemed possible. So hopefully humanity's getting back to that track, where we're not trying to teach that out of people, and put them in the system, grind them, put them in the grinder, and then you get old, you retire, and then you take, as Wayne Dyer used to say, you take your music with you. Like you never put it out in the world. It's still inside you. So it ends up going to the grave with you. And that's a shame. That's a shame. And that's why we're doing stuff like this. Jennifer and I want to have fun. We want to hopefully give you some stuff to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, we're definitely thinking about it.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. So chapter 14. Let's see. This is the book of the words of righteousness and of the reproof of the watchers who belong to the world. That's interesting phrasing. Reproof of the watchers who belong to the world. According to that which he who is holy and great commanded in the vision, I received in my dream that I was now speaking with a tongue of flesh, and with my breath, which the Mighty One has put into the mouth of men, that they might converse with it. They say a lot to get to a simple point. Like that's saying a lot to just basically say, okay, I'm saying it in a human tongue so you can understand it.
Wow.
Let's see. And then in blue it says, so this is one of the author's notes, who belong to the world, or who are from eternity. So whatever that is. And understand with the heart, as he has created and given to men the power of comprehending the world of understanding, So has he created and given to me the power of reproving the watchers, the offspring of heaven. I have written your petition, and in my vision it has been shown to me that what you request will not be granted you as long as the world endures. Wow. So basically it's saying that you've already made your bed and you're sleeping in it, and it's not nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to change until basically the end times.
Wow.
And it says, let's see, judgment has been passed upon you. Your request will not be granted. And then this is an author's comment here. This passage only refers to the watchers, not to the offspring of the watchers, which is interesting. The watchers are called the offspring of heaven, which is the same as sons of God or angels. This passage tells us that no salvation will ever be available to the watchers because they corrupted the human race. So interesting. So moving on. So basically the fallen angels, watchers, whatever, they're the ones that are condemned, not their offspring. From this time forward, never shall you ascend into heaven. He has said that on the earth he will bind you as long as the world endures. So these people are basically trapped in human form or trapped on the earth forever. So they will never make it back to heaven, which would be an interesting thing, because if you came from heaven, and heaven obviously is a much, at least it's portrayed as being a much different place than earth. Can you imagine being not able to go back to some place that, possibly that you really loved and was like unbelievably beautiful and yada yada yada, and now you're stuck on this rock forever.
Wow.
It says, from this time forward, never shall you. Oh, I already read that. Okay, so, but before these things, you shall behold the destruction of your beloved sons. You shall not possess them, but they shall fall before you by the sword. So basically, their kids are going to die in battle. Neither shall you entreat for them, nor for yourselves, but you shall weep and supplicate in silence the words of the book which I wrote. And then another author's note here, it says, or likewise, despite your tears and prayers, you will receive nothing, whatever contained in the writing which I have written. Okay. It says, a vision thus appeared to me. Behold, in that vision, clouds and a mist invited me. Agitated stars and flashes of lightning impelled and pressed me forwards, while winds in the vision assisted my flight. Oh, so he's flying around now, accelerating my progress. They elevated me aloft to heaven. I proceeded until I arrived at a wall built with stones of crystal. A vibrating flame surrounded it, which began to strike me with terror. Into this vibrating flame I entered. Let's see. And drew nigh to a suspicious habitation, built also with stones of crystal. Its walls too, as well as pavement, were formed with stones of crystal, and crystal likewise was the ground. Its roof had the appearance of agitated stars and flashes of lightning, and among them were cherubim of fire. We just talked about the cherubim earlier. In a stormy sky, a flame burned around its walls, and its portal blazed with fire. When I entered into this dwelling, it was hot as fire and cold as ice. No trace of delight or of life was there. Terror overwhelmed me, and a fearful shaking seized me. Interesting. Let's move on here. This is a big chapter. Violently agitated and trembling, I fell upon my face. In the vision I looked, and behold, there was another habitation more spacious than the former, every entrance to which was opened before me, erected in the midst of a vibrating flame. I'm just going to stop here for a sec because
Mhm.
just even reading that the picture that he's painting, it's it reminds me of like the Crystal City,
Oh,
whenever you know what I'm saying. Like, was that the Wizard of Oz? That was what was
uh,
the Crystal City?
You mean Emerald City?
Oh, maybe Emerald City. Okay,
Emer-
I'm thinking of somewhere. There's a Crystal City in a movie or something too, in
Yeah,
addition
yeah.
to Emerald
Is it
City,
Indiana Jones? Is that a Crystal City? Does anybody know?
possibly.
Possibly.
But the way it sounds, it just sounds like maybe if you've never experienced this before or you've never seen crystal, and people always talk of heavenly light as being bright, like so bright, like if you were human you would not be able to look in it. But for all the people with the near death experiences, they always describe it as this impossibly bright loving light, which
Mhm.
doesn't seem like it's going to hurt you. But can you
Right.
imagine if that light was refracting through all that crystal, through the buildings, through the street, through the whatever? It would seem like it was on fire.
Oh, that's a good point.
So I don't know if that's the case or not, but and yes, Christy, that's exactly the kind of the point I was getting to. Frequency. So if you can imagine
Mhm.
sound or anything, like crystal is a very good conductor of frequency, sound, and electromagnetic whatever. And that's why they used to use it in quartz watches. They would they were so yeah. It's interesting. Just that description so far just kind of seems for somebody living at that time that probably would be frightening and
Mhm.
terrifying. Not ever seeing a crystal city or crystal roads or that kind of thing, and
Mhm.
having light shining through it. I mean, if you think about like on a bright sunny day, if you ever had some kind of crystal sitting on a table or a chandelier or something, you see all these light or refracted like rainbow colors all over your table and walls and that kind of stuff. And
Right.
I can only imagine what that would be like, whether it was in a vision or not.
Yeah.
Let's see
Amazing.
here. Let's see. Its floor was on fire. Above were lightnings and agitated stars. Wonder what the agitated stars mean, because that's brought up several times.
Yeah.
Agitated stars.
Agitated stars.
So I'm wondering, how like on a hazy day, like they kind of have that wave or that heat, like so the things in the distance look like they're moving a little bit, like they're. So I wonder, like if you were looking at stars through something like that,
Mhm.
would they look like they're moving or agitated as he's describing?
Mhm.
So it's just interesting the way it's described there.
Definitely.
Um, Attentively, I surveyed it and saw that it contained an exalted throne, the appearance of which was like that of frost, while its circumference resembled the orb of the brilliant sun. And there was the voice of the cherubim. And see, there's that again,
Mhm.
voice of the cherubim.
Right.
And we're talking about frequency and the crystal and that kind of stuff. I can only imagine. Like, have you ever seen like people, like wetting the end of your finger and rubbing it around the rim of a crystal glass, that kind of
Mhm.
hums and makes
Right.
sort of like a
That's
so
right.
interesting.
Mhm.
From underneath this mighty throne, rivers of flaming fire issued. To look upon it was impossible. One great in glory sat upon it. So that's interesting phrasing. One great in glory sat upon it.
Yeah.
Not saying that it was God, just saying
Mhm.
one great in glory sat upon it,
Mhm.
whose robe was brighter than the sun and whiter than snow. Uh, we know it wasn't Gandalf.
Mhm.
Uh, no angel was capable of penetrating to view the face of him, the glorious and the effulgent, nor could any mortal behold him if fire was flaming around him. Interesting. A fire also of great extent continued to rise up before him, so that not one of those who surrounded him was capable of approaching him.
Mhm.
Among the myriads and of myriads who were before him, to him holy consultation was needless. Yet did not the sanctified who were near him depart far from him, either by night or by day, nor were they removed from him. I also was so far advanced with a veil on my face and trembling. Then the Lord, with his own mouth, called me, saying, "Approach hither, Enoch, at my holy word." Jeez. And he raised me up, making me draw near even to the entrance. My eye was directed to the ground. And here's an author's note here. It says, "This is apparently a vision of heaven similar to that of John in the book of Revelation. I do not see how anyone could make this up and expect people to believe it. It must have happened just as described by Enoch. The Bible says that God is a consuming fire. So these passages certainly agree with the Bible." And he refers to Deuteronomy 4:24, 9:3, and Hebrews 12:29. So that's a lot to digest.
It really is. A
I
lot.
mean, that's
Wow.
thinking back to, because for whatever reasons, all it took for me was to watch like one near-death experience, and now YouTube puts about 30 of them on my thing, like on my feed or whatever, every time I turn YouTube on.
Okay.
So I've kind of like the last couple of weeks, I'll watch a couple of them, you know, like they're 10 minutes or 15 minutes long or whatever. But it is interesting that whether they're Christian or atheist or otherwise, always seems to be that same thread of that overwhelming light, and not a like a loving light, like they actually feel like if you were to take the feeling or the emotion of love and make it physical, and like that's what it felt like it was like your own parent or something, somebody that loved you so much that was embracing you, completely embracing you. And so I just, you know, and I kind of agree with the author here, or at least the person that's making the notes, that especially in Enoch's time, I think you would be ridiculed so bad if you were to make something like that up. Like if that wasn't totally believable and you weren't convincing, you know, that would be, you know, oh, there's Enoch, here's the storyteller, you know, well, I thought we got rid of him already, you know. So, but, you know, take for it what you will. I think that chapter, I think, sets the stage for what's coming here, what's coming in the Book of Enoch, you know, with because God loved Enoch. God really did love Enoch, and he was one of two people in the Bible that were taken straight to heaven, like that never actually, at least that we can find out, never experienced death. Like they went basically from earth to heaven. Like there was no transition. So the fact that he's having these visions and these dreams, and you know, he's being led around by these angels and being shown all this. And if you think about the line of Enoch, you know, Noah is in that line, and you know what happened in Noah's time. You know, basically, okay, humanity's so corrupt, we're gonna wash away all the evil from the world, and anybody that's, you know, redeemable is going to be on this ark. Same with the animals. And when the flood goes away, then you're basically starting over again. So I just think that his line, so from Enoch to Noah to, you know, the entire line, are being used to hopefully help steer humanity, you know. And I always wondered, it's like, is Enoch, somebody in Enoch's line, still alive today, you know, or Noah's line, or, you know, that kind of thing.
That would be interesting to know.
It wouldn't be Snoop Dogg, that's for sure. And
definitely not.
Or Eminem.
No. Yeah.
But, you know, and going off subject a little bit, I think about this a lot. I don't know why. It's like, even if Jesus was alive today, would people know who he was?
Good question.
Would people believe him? You know, would you know, that's, I mean, is he such a divine being that you can't not know that it's him? Or does he appear human but with a godly nature? And you have to kind of figure it out on your own. So interesting to ponder.
Definitely.
All right, chapter 15.
Okay. So Enoch 15, and he answered and said to me, and I heard his voice, "Fear not, Enoch, thou righteous man and scribe of righteousness. Approach hither and hear my voice, and go say to the watchers of heaven who have sent thee to intercede for them, you should intercede for men and not men for you." Wow. Can I read that again? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. You should intercede for men and not men for you. Oh, wow. So that's really straightening out the proper context. Like the angels, they keep messing up. Like even having a man intercede for them, they've really blown it. I could see from that, right? They were supposed to be the one interceding for men. Wow. So
It's like
invert
having your
version.
younger brother or sister go talk to your parents for you, you know?
Oh my gosh. Like how ridiculous that would be,
Yeah.
right? Oh boy. And people have done that, right?
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Whether have ye left the high, holy, and eternal heaven and lain with women and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men and taken to yourselves wives and done like the children of earth and begotten giants as your sons? And though ye were holy, spiritual, and living the eternal life, you have defiled yourselves with the blood of women and have begotten children with the blood of flesh. And as the children of men have lusted after flesh and blood, as those also do who die and perish. Therefore have I given them wives also, that they might impregnate them and beget children by them, that thus nothing might be wanting to them on earth. But you were formerly spiritual, living the eternal life, and immortal for all generations of the world. And therefore I have not appointed wives for you. For as for the spiritual ones of the heaven, in heaven is their dwelling. And now the giants who were produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they were born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. As for the spirits of heaven, in heaven shall be their dwelling. But as for the spirits of the earth, which were born upon the earth, on the earth shall be their dwelling. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. Oh boy. Whoa. That explains a lot. Let me see what the commentary says about Enoch 15.
Yeah, this reads a little different too than what you have there.
Oh, has it?
Yeah, and it's kind of says the same thing, but it words it a little differently.
Oh.
But like verse 6, it says, "But you from the beginning were made spiritual," like implying that Enoch was always spiritual, and that's why like God loves him.
Hmm.
But you from the beginning were made spiritual, possessing a life which is eternal and not subject to death forever. That's
Wow,
interesting.
that
And then
is.
in like verse 8 it says, "Now the giants who have been born of spirit and flesh shall be called upon earth evil spirits, and on earth shall be their habitation." let's see. Evil spirits shall they be upon the earth, and the spirits of the wicked shall they be called. And then the last line of that, it says, the habitation of the spirits of heaven shall be in heaven, but upon earth shall be the habitation of terrestrial spirits who are born on earth.
Oh, right.
That's
Interesting. I see that difference. Earth's terrestrial spirits.
and that last section that you read kind of reminds me of like today, like this time period, like
Yeah.
verse 10.
Mm-hmm.
They shall cause lamentation, no food shall they eat, they shall be thirsty, they shall be concealed, and shall not rise up against the sons of men and against women, for they come forth during the days of slaughter and destruction. So
Wow.
that's just interesting.
That is, whoa. So
So
in the blue,
Mhm.
it says impious offspring, literally giants. Impious means lacking reverence, not pious, lacking due respect or dutifulness, which probably means they did not respect or acknowledge God. That makes sense.
Mhm.
And then it breaks down the Greek word for clouds. Here, Nephelis may disguise a more ancient reading of Nephilim. So I guess in one of the translations they use maybe clouds.
Hmm.
So then after the last verse, it's saying, shall not. Nearly all manuscripts contain this negative, but Charles and Nib and others believe that not should be deleted. So the phrase reads, shall rise up.
Right. That's what I was thinking too.
Shall rise up. Okay. According to the passage above, demons who walk the earth, and they reference Matthew 12:43, are the spirits of the offspring of the watchers and humans. The watchers themselves are condemned to become oppressing spirits above and over nations and regions. The Bible does not explain how or why such oppressing spirits exist, but only that they do exist. Daniel 10:13 calls one of them the prince of the Persian kingdom. So now we know where such oppressing spirits came from and who they are.
Mhm.
Whoa, that says a lot.
Yeah, because right now you hear a lot of people talking about principalities and things like that that are over certain areas. Like when
Yeah.
we were in the gathering in New York, they were talking about the principality that was that like this Pythos
Oh, yeah.
over New York, kind of squeezing the life out of the region kind of thing. And I'm not sure which angel it was, so forgive me, but an angel appeared before during a battle, before a battle, whatever it was. God, who was it? But anyway,
Mhm.
the angel apologized that it took so long for him to get there
Oh,
because he was battling the Prince of Persia, and that's exactly what it says. I think in the Bible, he
right.
referencing that principality over Persia.
Uh-huh.
Um,
That
but
was Gabriel when he was
Gabriel,
the
there,
message
thank you.
back. Yeah. And then he fought for the body of Moses. Remember, there was some contention, but it took a long time to get the answer because he was fighting on his way back.
Yes, Kyle. I hope you have a wonderful night. I'm glad you stopped on, and
Yes, thank you,
hope
Kyle.
you can watch later or watch the rest.
Hmm. Good night, Kyle.
Um, but yeah, and that's another common thread between different books of the Bible, the Book of Enoch, and others, is the idea of these evil spirits, these principalities, these um, for to put it in a weird kind of simple way,
Hmm.
it's like the devil on your shoulder, or that voice in your head that's not your own, or the voice in your head that sounds like yours but wants you to do something stupid.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like these and they exert this control over people, over areas, and oppress areas and oppress people, maybe not physically but like emotionally. And so it's, I think some people are more susceptible to it than others.
Mhm.
And especially in areas where you have, like, I'll just use New York as an example, or even New Orleans, which is, I guess, where the next gathering is going to be.
Oh.
um I mean, look at all the areas, especially that have a historical occult background, like New Orleans, for
Mhm.
example. And people that, I guess, that aren't as susceptible to it, I guess, enjoy the area. But I guess other people that are susceptible to it think New Orleans is one of the most, like, it gives them the heebie-jeebies when they're there. And to put it in a technical term, I guess heebie-jeebies is a technical term. But
Yes.
um, I get that way when I go to certain areas of the country too. I mean,
Mhm.
I feel super comfortable and relaxed in some areas,
Mhm.
and in other areas, I can't wait to get away from it.
Right.
And so I can see what they're saying here, and I can see what he's saying about the being basically condemned to be these, principalities and these oppressing spirits. And
Mhm.
I mean, if I was one of these spirits and I've been around that long, and you've been forsaken basically by God, even though it
Wow.
was your own fault,
Mhm.
I probably would be a little mischievous or pissed off too.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never thought much about like demonic possession until I saw The Exorcist.
Oh.
Like when
Wow.
I was a kid, it's like, how could you, like, if you were around when The Exorcist came out, like, I was a kid,
Mhm.
so to see that was scary. I mean, that
Very.
was scary to me, like you would not believe. I had nightmares about that movie for a long time.
Me too. I did too. I think those movies, when they made The Exorcist, The Omen, um,
Amityville Horror.
yeah, Carrie,
Hmm.
those movies I think were more spiritually correct when it comes to like biblical things, and that's what made them all the more scary.
Yes.
In my opinion, I just like, wow. I had to sleep with the lights on for so long. Like when I did watch those movies, I wasn't allowed to see them when I was really young, but I caught up and did watch them later on. And I was really shook for a
Hmm.
long time with The Exorcist. And then you hear all the things that happened on the set to the
Hmm.
various people. They were definitely tapped in to the demonic, like totally.
Yeah, Charlie Jordan, for those of you who know who Charlie is, um, he's talked a couple times about instances and things that have happened in his family, you know, in the movies, especially The Exorcist, and anything involving demonic possession. There's always an element, like, knowing that the evil is there. Like, there seems to always be flies always seem to appear
Mm.
in a crazy number, like, like not a normal, like, occasional fly,
Mm.
whatever.
Oh,
um I think that's kind of creepy as well, and in
yeah.
a way that, because I've seen it happen a couple times, and I've seen it for no logical reason, like there's no, like, rotting meat or rotting food or whatever.
Mhm.
I've come across in houses that I didn't feel comfortable in. Like,
Interesting.
my
Yeah.
wife and I are real estate agents, and we just recently sold. It's Well, I don't want to say it because I don't want the people that have bought it to figure out I'm talking about their house. But went up to the very top floor,
Mhm.
and there's this little room, or cupola, whatever you want to call it, on top of the house.
Mhm.
And there's really, like, nothing up there. Like, there was no rotting food or anything like that. But I went up there, and there was like hundreds of flies all over the windows. They were all over the place. And I'm
Oh,
like, I'm out of here.
yeah.
So, I went downstairs, and Charlie described the time a rough period of time in their family. Um, and until that was kind of resolved, flies kept showing up at this particular family member's house. And
Wow.
so, you know, a lot to speculate about there. But
That makes
let's see.
sense.
Casey says, I always see a lot when there is a deceased animal or rotting food. Yeah, that's true.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
But to Jennifer's point, I do think that Hollywood has got the biblical aspect of it correct, as far as, like, to me, like, these evil spirits, these demonic entities or whatever, and they're the capability of just taking somebody over and being able to possess them completely. And I think some people, we're getting off on a tangent, but that's fine. I think some people are more susceptible than others, and I don't know that it has anything to do with, like, your level of faith. I don't know how that works, but it seems like some people that have been possessed in the past, at least, some of the more well-known ones, were Christians, that were, so I don't know how that works, but I just know some people seem to be more susceptible to it than others. Like, they're more, I don't know, I don't want to use the word willing, because I don't think that's the case, but there's something about them that makes them more suitable for these entities to inhabit, and I don't know, or to control, for that matter. So
it could be an aspect of, in their familial lineage, because a lot of us have had people in our families that have practiced the dark arts, and that may be something that might make a future generation, like maybe certain people, not everybody in the family, but some more sensitive to the attacks and the luring of the dark side, is because, maybe someone down in your bloodline, like for me, my grandmother on my father's side, I really believe she was a witch. I believe she practiced witchcraft. She knew about roots. You know how they talk about Azazel taught herbs?
right.
She knew herbs. And this is something, I know it steps on the toes, because I do believe, like, God gave us a lot of these plants to help us, and we know that medicines are made from plants, like when they want to make them more organic and not just total lab creations. But
Right.
the plant kingdom has medicinal qualities. So I believe that my grandmother, I heard stories that she practiced something. They said medicine. She practiced it in her basement. She didn't allow people down there, and she did stuff with herbs. So I believe she was a witch, like a practicing witch, and she went to church. Okay, so we just have to talk about these things, because she was known as a church lady and a respected person, but I don't think many people knew that she was down in the basement practicing witchcraft also. Okay, so that's something. And I believe that things like that have come through my bloodline. I've had to fight certain things. I was a child who was attacked a lot. I had, like, bleeding nose. Like, when I was younger, I'd wake up, my pillow would be full of blood, for a period of time. So I'm thinking back now, and I'm like, I bet it was because of this, and I was kidnapped as a child, like these kind of things, Yeah. So I'm just saying that to say that these things come through bloodline. So I believe that I can trace back. I'm pretty comfortable saying that she was a witch that went to church. Okay. So that's just a word to the wise, that not everybody that attends church is Christian.
Well, sometimes it's how you fit in too. It's just, you have to have that, especially the farther back in history you go, the more and more prevalent, Christianity or especially the Catholic Church was in a lot of people's lives and communities and that kind of thing. And if you weren't part of it, you were kind of an outcast. And so if you wanted to be part of the community, I guess, and still kind of do your own thing, you really had to have that dual life or dual personality, whatever you want to call it, dual citizenship, so to speak.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a lot of, depending on what time of history. I mean, people call them druids, pagans, whatever. Like, and so basically, there is a lot of healing knowledge that's been passed down from ages past, and it involves the earth, like the roots and the flowers and the berries and different things. And
Mm-hmm.
since it didn't come from an established Christian source, it was always frowned upon and considered evil because
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like sanctioned by the church, I guess. And so if you weren't going to lay hands on somebody to heal them, and you were using a different method, that, I mean, even today, look at how long it took to make homeopathic medicine like more mainstream or more
Mm-hmm.
accepted by society. And people still have a little, like, they think they're quacks to some extent. And
Right.
even though, like, I have a friend who's a doctor of like homeopathic
Mm-hmm.
medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and the stuff she does is wonderful. I mean, her patients love her, and they get treated. I mean, they get, I'm not talking like cancer and stuff like that, or things that you would have to be hospitalized for, but just like day-to-day
Yeah.
wellness kind of things, and immune system kind of things, and whatever. And so it's taken a long time,
Mm-hmm.
but witchcraft can be divided into a couple things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
we don't know what grandma was into totally.
Yeah, not totally. Never went down in that basement. Not her basement. My other grandmother, however, I've been in her basement.
Yeah, grandmothers either had like canning jars in their basement, or they had other weird stuff. Like, there was like no, it was like one or the other. Like,
Yeah,
there,
yeah. They
you
had
had,
altars, right? Altars
yeah,
are
yeah,
amazing, right?
yeah. So chapter 16. Let's see. Uh, we'll do this. We'll stop at 18 today.
Okay.
So 16. And as to the death of the giants, wheresoever their spirits depart from their bodies, let their flesh, that which is perishable, be without judgment.
Mm.
Thus shall they perish until the day of the great consummation of the great world. A destruction shall take place of the watchers and the impious. Let's see. And now to the watchers who have sent you to pray for them, who in the beginning were in heaven, say, say, in heaven have you been. Secret things, however, have not been manifested to you. Yet have you known a reprobated mystery. That's a weird sentence.
That's
Yet have you known a reprobated mystery.
ooh.
And this you have related to women in the hardness of your heart, and by that mystery have women and mankind multiplied evils upon the earth. Say to them, never therefore shall you obtain peace. Sheesh.
Oh boy.
So he's really condemning the watchers here.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
let's see. It says, and as to the death of the giants, so basically not condemning this. Um, let's see. And death of the giants, where so their spirits depart from their bodies, let their flesh, which is perishable, be without. So basically, it doesn't sound like they can be redeemed either. Oh, they're their bodies.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So their bodies by saying no judgment for their bodies, meaning, what does that really mean? Like, not yet? Like they were reserved, I guess, for.
Let's see what this dude says here. So
Hmm.
the commentary says, not only are demons that walk upon the earth described, but also those spirits known as familiar spirits. So we
Oh,
now know who the mediums and the channelers are talking to.
right.
That's interesting.
That
These
is.
spirits that speak through channelers say that lived upon earth thousands of years ago. That much is apparently true. But the rest of what they teach is a continuation of their attempts to corrupt the human race by teaching evil and lies.
Interesting.
That
Hmm.
is interesting. So, and I've always kind of heard that it's like people that are mediums or channelers and that kind of thing,
Hmm.
because they're connecting with those spirits,
Hmm.
that those are evil spirits, even though they come off as and pretend to be, you know, benevolent or benign or whatever the case is,
Hmm.
that they're actually, by doing that, they're perpetuating and allowing more evil to inhabit the earth,
Hmm.
kind of thing. Like they're like a high-speed internet connection to evil, so to
Oh,
speak.
that's a great way to describe it. Wow.
And all you have to do is, I guess, turn on your TV, which in some cases are these mediums, these minds, or whatever the case is.
Hmm.
Um, that's an interesting chapter.
That is.
I have to think
That
about that
really
one a
is.
little bit.
Yeah, yeah, that one is. Wow.
Let's see. One of the other commentaries says they're like an alternative. It says, or their flesh shall be destroyed before the judgment.
Oh.
So basically, they're supposed to all perish before the
Oh.
end times or whatever, before
Hmm.
the final judgment, I guess.
Hmm.
So again, we're just totally flying by the seat of our pants here. So don't take everything we say with with the 100% certainty. Just kind of swim in the pool with us. We got our little floaties on our arms, and we're trying to make our way into the deep end here.
There you are.
All right, so 17.
17. Okay. They raised me up into a certain place where there was the appearance of a burning fire. And when they pleased, they assumed the likeness of men. They carried me to a lofty spot, to a mountain, the top of which reached to heaven. And I beheld the receptacles of light and of thunder at the extremities of the place where it was deepest. There was a bowl, no, there was a bow of fire, and arrows in their quiver, a sword of fire, and every species of lightning. Then they elevated me to a babbling stream and to a fire in the west, which received all the setting of the sun. I came to a river of fire, which flowed like water and emptied itself into the great sea westwards. To the babbling stream, literally, to water of life which spoke. That was a notation. So they're saying the babbling stream is literally water of life which speaks. Oh boy. Like literally a babbling stream, huh? I saw every large river until I arrived at the great darkness. I went to where all the flesh migrate, and I beheld the mountains of the gloom, which constitutes winter, and the place from which issues the water in every abyss. I saw also the mouths of all the rivers in the world and the mouths of the deep. Oh boy, let's see what that says in the 17 in the concordance here. So this commentary is Michael D. Fortner, and he's breaking down, well, where there was, or where they, the angels, were like, when it says they were like the appearance of a burning fire. Oh, the place was, and they pleased, when they pleased, they assumed the likeness of men. So they can see, this is deep. So this is what we've been told, and I guess now it's just hitting my head, like they can take on the likeness of
Mhm.
humans. So I think that, even though I've heard it, it's still hard to like just put my head around it. That we could have all entertained angels. Just the thought of that, right?
Yes.
Oh my. So let's see if they break. Oh, that they talk about the babbling stream, which it spoke. Oh boy. That's really amazing.
And it's interesting the way in verse 4 how it describes um, fire to the west, which received all the setting of the sun. Almost sounds like a container for the sun. Like the sun's like going into its little home, like its own little container kind of thing, its own little flame container,
Uh-huh.
whatever. Let's see.
Hmm.
Emptied or something I saw. Where is it here? I just thought this was a weird phrasing. I went to where all of flesh migrate.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean,
Migrate.
like
Where all flesh migrate.
all like living people, all souls, all I don't know what that means. I went to where all of flesh migrate.
Hmm. I wonder too what that is, because it says that there were mountains of the gloom, which constitutes winter. And we've heard winter. Even Brandon tried to talk. He
Right.
warned us that we were going to have a dark winter, right? Isn't that kind of interesting? A dark winter.
Funny how that boomerang came back around.
Right, right. And they used that in that show. I didn't watch. What is it? Game of Thrones. Didn't they say winter's
Oh,
coming all the time?
right. Yeah.
Right, winter is coming. Like that's a threat or something. Winter is coming. So winter's seen as darkness, huh? And in winter, like things die in the winter, right? They're not like, it's the opposite of spring and summer. So if flesh migrates to the great darkness, it says, he arrived at the great darkness where all flesh migrate. So this would be maybe death.
Could be.
Because death seems to be a lot more than what I initially thought. And being that, we've heard that death is the final enemy that Jesus, he puts down death. So death will be no more. So it seems like death is like almost like a personification of place. It's dark. Flesh has been relegated to this place because of the fall in the garden. So I'm just maybe.
Yeah, no, that's interesting phrasing. Like because obviously there's a separation between flesh and spirit. So it's interesting that he mentions just flesh, not spirit.
Yeah, yeah, like there's a place that
Almost
flesh.
like it's like a journey, like how in like ancient Greece and ancient Rome, the concept of traveling to the underworld in ancient Egypt,
Mhm.
on your way to the afterlife or death or
Right.
whatever Tartarus or Hades, whatever.
Mhm.
Because before it says, I saw every large river until I arrived at the great darkness. So I'm
Yes.
wondering, it sounds like it's all flowing into this one place, sort of.
Mhm, mhm. And
Um,
we've heard of the river Styx, where
mhm.
it's like crossing the abyss to go to the other side. I want to look into that because the river Styx is spoken of. Where do I know that from? Like
Well, you
I'm
can
getting
ask Achilles about it
okay.
because, well, in Greek mythology,
Hmm.
I think it's Greek, not Roman. They're so similar.
Right.
Um, when Achilles was born, he was held by his foot and
Mhm.
dipped into the river Styx to make him invincible. And
Oh,
that's why his heel was the only thing that would kill him, because that was the only thing that wasn't dipped into the river,
interesting.
because that's where he was held from, was the bottom of it. And that's why it's called Achilles heel,
Right.
because
Right.
that was his weakness. That's how he died. He got shot with an arrow in his heel.
Hmm.
But yeah, the river Styx has a major role in mythology, and
Hmm.
it's, you had to pay the ferryman to get from one side to the other, so you had to go to the underworld with. That's why they put the coins on your eyes, like when they put you in the little raft and floated you out onto the river. They put the coins over your eyes so you had money to cross over.
Oh, right, right. Oh, see, this is really good. And I've heard that, and I didn't really get into mythology. I have a cousin who she's like, she could have gotten a degree in mythology. She can
Mhm.
just rattle it off. She remembers, and I wish I would have paid more attention to it. I know just a little, I can recall some of it, but not in the way that like she understands it. It sounds like you understand it a lot too. Um, but they used a lot of things that they just switched it out and did things with those stories, those
Mhm.
they tell us they're myths, but even in that we're learning something different, that these things fit in,
Mhm.
to the antediluvian world, and
Yes.
those giants and things like that were literal. This was not allegory. So this is pretty deep.
Yeah, almost every ancient culture, regardless of religion, has some kind of concept of a journey to the afterlife or a journey to the underworld. And some of them are nicer journeys than others. I mean, they portray them as being, I mean, look at the pharaohs of Egypt, and look at the ancient Egyptian culture in general.
Mhm.
The the thought of your physical body dying was not didn't scare a lot of people, especially if you were nobility, or had places in these houses of nobility.
Mhm.
It was almost like they so can you imagine living your life without fear of dying, like without fear, like
Amazing.
knowing that your next journey was probably going to be even better than your current one? Like this was like, having that mindset your whole life, like that was.
Imagine. That's one of the things that I want to explore more, because I know that we are held bound to this realm through fear of death. And that's
Mhm.
one of the things that keeps us from confronting the enemy's people, his children, Cain's children. They knew that when they instilled fear, especially into the Western mindset, because it seems that Eastern mindsets don't have fear of death.
Right.
That was one of the things that it scared us about the remember the Taliban and all of them,
Right.
ISIS and everything. It's like they don't fear death. That's why
No.
they are so scary, because they don't fear death.
Well, same with, like, in World War II, the Japanese,
Oh yeah, the
the
kamikazes.
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, they
yeah.
they truly believe, like, these jihadists, these people that are okay with strapping bombs to themselves and going on to the next life, because they truly believe that
Mhm.
they're doing a noble deed, or they're going to be rewarded for it in the next life.
Right, right.
And that's always been something that military and other leaders in the past have feared cultures like that,
Mhm.
because they were very formidable opponents regardless of their numbers. Like they
Very.
were, well, look, the same thing happened in Western Europe. um, when England was really like around the Arthurian times, like during that growth of, the concept of England being like this holy city, like this beacon of, like society
Mhm.
slash Christianity, whatever. But when they came across the Celts and the Picts, like Picts, I think is how it's spelled,
Mhm.
they were just they weren't afraid to die. And it didn't matter how well trained the English army was, or the knights or the soldiers that went, especially if they were fighting in their and not in England but in these other lands. They were so savage and so brutal. You've got a culture like England, the society is so well groomed, and they're taught a certain way to fight war. And if you
Mhm.
fight outside, like, they expect everybody to fight within that same construct, follow the same rules, kind of thing.
Right. Yes.
And so
Yes.
when you encounter a society like that has different rules and they're not afraid to die,
Mhm.
actually it's glorious. I mean, look at the Vikings and Norsemen. Totally, they live for that
Right.
because they feel that to live a glorious life and die in battle is to ensure their place in Valhalla, to ensure that
Oh yeah.
they're going to be sitting with their forefathers and with Odin and the other gods. They're going to be, having a place of stature there. So
Mm.
these people, they're not afraid. Even in modern society, like what you were describing,
Yeah.
they're not afraid, and that's what makes them dangerous. They're not afraid.
That's right. And they invert it when you think about how the rulers or controllers of our realm, they really inverted that to flip it. Like whereas the Western cultures and the more Christianized cultures, they instill fear.
Hmm.
So the fear has been instilled from the church actually. So
Yes.
that's the really like the thing that makes me angry about how we've been, programmed this way is that this fear of death keeps us from really living.
Yes.
That's the irony. It's like we saw it over the last 2 years. Like when I was still in the hospitals working, I'll never forget a woman who came in. This is like when things were beginning and they were starting to ask nurses to wear the mask all the time, at
Mhm.
work for 12 hours, which I didn't do. I was that like I just stood out. It was terrifying how people just didn't they were scared of me because
Yes.
I wasn't scared. So I could see how that does affect people. I have no mask on and they have two masks. These are nurses. And they're wearing them while we're doing charting, in the nursing lounge. We're not even in patient rooms. They have two masks on. And I never wore it. So that eventually caught up with me, of course, but this family, I was taking care of a family member, and the family member was in with the mask, and she looked at me, and she has a t-shirt that says Jesus is Lord and everything, big t-shirt, and she's in a mask, and she, I could see the fear in her eyes when I walked in unmasked. And I start to take care of her family member, and she looked at me and she said, well, aren't you going to put a mask on? And I said, no. And then she said, why? You're not scared? And I said, no. And I looked at her t shirt and pointed. I said, you shouldn't be scared. You have a t shirt that says Jesus is Lord. Why are you afraid? And she was like, she just, it almost like recoiled her reaction.
Hmm.
But it showed me a lot in terms of what professing Christians, how they behaved over the last 2 years. Totally afraid of death.
Right. And wanting to make other people afraid of it.
Exactly. They were upset if you were not afraid. That was a problem.
This goes back to that, you don't want to be wrong. Like, so if you're in the what you think is the majority of people that are afraid for their lives, for this pandemic thing that's been going on, you know, they start the questions like, well, am I wrong? Should I be afraid, or is it wrong to not be afraid? I
Mm.
don't want to be wrong because everybody else is afraid, so
Right.
it's like peer pressure almost. Like you want to be afraid because everybody else is afraid, not necessarily because rationally you're afraid.
Right.
You just think you should be afraid. And I
Exactly.
think there's a big difference because
It's-
you should, and maybe we'll end with that. We'll end with the concept of living in fear or not living in fear.
Mhm.
Why would you knowingly go through life afraid and not living your life, not living your best life anyway,
Mhm.
and not doing the things you want to do, and not, you know, experiencing the things you want to experience? And think of all the movies that you've seen where somebody's on their deathbed and one of their friends is there and they have nothing but regret because they never did the things they wanted to do because they thought they had to be afraid to live.
Mhm.
And I there's some common sense you have to use. Just obviously you don't want to go do some crazy stuff and like jump in a jump in a wood chipper or something like that. But
Mhm. Right.
there's I try to it was hard for me too because growing up in a society that constantly showing you, even on television,
Mhm.
like people being afraid of living and being afraid of their lives and being afraid of dying. And, you know, life has 100% mortality rate. I
Exactly.
mean, 100% mortality. You're going to die.
Mhm.
As, as soon as you're born, this is kind of crass, but as soon as you're born, you're dying.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it shouldn't be a scary thing. It's like, it's going to happen.
Mhm.
They've, what do they call it? Like the two lines, the two dash lines. So you start at this line here and you're going to end up at this line at some point. What you
Mhm.
do between those lines is totally up to you. And if you're just going to waste your life worrying about getting to this line,
Yeah.
what's the point of, you know, I just, there's more to life than just existing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So don't be afraid, people. Don't
Yes.
be afraid.
Mm.
Some people, I think, I don't know. That could be a whole nother conversation because I think some people are so fearful they don't know how to be not fearful, and it's just ingrained in them that
Yeah.
even if you show them a way to have fun and enjoy their lives, they
Mhm.
would rather just still worry about dying. And
Yeah. It's hard to break it because it's been conditioned and reinforced. I believe God is the only one that can break them of that fear of death because it is a consuming, it's a prison.
yeah, Casey, it's right. I think it's more they are afraid of suffering before. If you mean like suffering before they die, yes,
Maybe.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. And I've watched people die. Many people die,
mhm.
and that process is it's different for everybody. It's unique in that sense for different people, but a lot of it contains the fear, and it just depends on how what kind of relationship, of course, they have with God. Also, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and and some people never experience death that in a way where like you're describing.
Hmm.
I've experienced friends dying and things like that, but
Hmm.
that's more like going to funerals and not actually watching them die.
Hmm.
Until recently, probably the last 3 or 4 years, I've never experienced that. Like when about I think it was 3 years ago, Julie's father was diagnosed with lung cancer, and so I was very close to him. I was very, very, very close to him.
Hmm.
So going to the nursing home every day and chatting with them and seeing the progression, and
Hmm.
then when he was in hospice seeing the progression there,
Hmm.
and actually being there when he passed away, was it was it was an eye-opening experience for me. I mean, I could because I had never experienced death that way.
Yeah.
Um, and then like the following year, my mom was diagnosed with lung cancer. She was like, nobody ever would have thought out of all the people in my family, like she was the healthiest. Like she never smoked or anything like that.
Oh.
And then, you know, watching that progression,
Mhm.
I wasn't there the day she passed away. I went down like 2 weeks before and I stayed for about 10 days and she
Mhm.
passed away like the week that I came home.
Oh.
But hearing some of the things that she told me, I mean, she knew me pretty much better than anybody did.
Mhm.
And she would tell me things when my dad wasn't there or my sister wasn't there. Like she would pull me close because she had a hard time talking.
Mhm.
And one of the first things she told me was, and just so you all know, nobody calls me John Boy but my mom.
Oh. Yeah.
So she used to call me John Boy all the time.
Mhm.
And so she said, John Boy, life life is not a rehearsal, I think is the exact words that she used.
Mhm.
She goes, I know there's things that you want to do and I know there's things that you love to do them. Life's
Oh.
not a rehearsal. What are you waiting for? Basically was the gist of what she was trying to tell me.
Wow. Mm.
And it really, like it hit me because I think that she felt some regret
Oh yeah.
for not doing some of the things that she probably wanted to do.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is not too long after that is when I kind of came back to the Lord. Like I almost feel like my mom was steering me because
Mhm.
she was very spiritual, very Christian, very religious.
Okay.
Um,
Mm.
and as a kid, it kind of freaked me out because she would always pray for me and she'd always say that she was praying for me.
Mhm.
And growing up as a kid, you always thought that was a bad thing because there was something wrong with you. If somebody had to pray for you, so like there had to be something wrong with you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's not how she meant it. Like she was
Mhm.
praying for me genuinely because she wanted me to be well and have a wonderful life.
Right.
Excuse me. But so yes,
Mm.
long story short, don't live in fear. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
if you have the ability to do something or you've thought about doing something, by all means do it. Don't
Mm.
wait.
That's right. And now that they are trying to drum up the, war
Jeez.
and things like that, we just have to be in prayer for all the scaredies out there because I know that anxiety has to be high for a lot of people because the cabal just keeps wanting to push more and more stuff, and so the rumors of war
Right.
and things like that. So we're going to be hearing a lot of people in their fearful states. So we just have to gird ourselves up and make sure we don't fall for this either.
And people think about it this way. Jennifer has a good point. The only people talking about this is not Ukraine or Russia. The United States, all these controlled players. You had Boris Johnson from England come out today, and people that have a vested interest in Ukraine through criminal dealings and other things in the past
Mhm.
are the ones that are pushing the narrative that Russia's going to invade any day. Even the Ukrainian prime minister or president, whatever they call him,
Mhm.
joked about it today,
Mhm.
stating that Russia's going to invade on Tuesday, and he was like not being serious, but that's what everybody else is the narrative's pushing is that uh, Russia's coming on Tuesday, like that's like, and they're like, where did you get this information?
Exactly.
I mean, so just take that kind of stuff with a grain of salt. You have people
Yeah.
that are worried about protecting their political and other investments in Ukraine, and they want to paint Russia as the bad guy because
Mhm.
Russia kicked out their central bank about a year or so ago.
That's right.
And so they have no cabal in Russia. And so now everybody, if you look at every country that's ever in the recent past kicked out the central banks, their leaders have either been assassinated or the countries have been vilified in some way or another.
Exactly. Yep.
So like Jennifer said, take it with a grain of salt. Don't be smart, but don't be afraid.
Yeah.
You know, if you need some extra groceries or some whatever, it's always good to have some extra stuff around anyway. If you need, for whatever reason, if you need to go without for a couple weeks and you can't get to the store for whatever reason. So it is what it is. We live in an unusual time, but this is all going to play out for the best. We're all going to be happy in the end, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Casey, thanks for hanging around the whole time.
Yes, Casey. Thank you.
We've kind of gone up and down in numbers, but Casey wins the award for sticking in the chat.
Yay.
So share this video with your friends if you want to, and if you learned anything, by all means, talk about it with your buddies and your family or whatever. And we're going to continue this series until we're done with the book, and we'll move on to something else. But I don't know how long it's going to take. We're in chapter 18 now, so we're about a quarter of the way, I guess, through this. So, but every Monday at 6, this is when you'll find us here. And if you have any questions or other things you might want to talk about in the future, drop us a line. I'll put all the information in the notes or the comment section there, and we like the interaction. So
thank you.
And Jennifer will give me, I have her stuff, so subscribe to her channel too, because she puts out pretty regular videos, and they're very interesting. I enjoy where she comes from, like where her head's at with some of these things, and so an interesting perspective on a lot of stuff.
Oh, thanks a lot, John.
And you'll like it. All I can say is it won't be your typical night of watching YouTube.
Definitely not. No.
So Jennifer, thank you so much for being here again, and look forward to next week.
All righty. Blessings.
Love you guys, and until next time, like I said, drop us a line, but don't be afraid. Enjoy yourself.
Yes.
Enjoy your week. Don't let stuff bother you. So.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Until next time. Talk to you soon.
All right. God bless you.